Hi, everyone. For our final session, we have what is called an intervention. So basically, we have 5 back-to-back sessions with 5 stellar speakers, and these speakers are going to be telling us about something that they are very good at. I'm going to introduce the moderator, and then he's going to walk through each speaker and do the session. The whole session altogether is around 70 minutes. So moderating this session is Paul Papadimitriou. Paul, please come on stage.
Hi, guys. I know it's getting late, so you guys are starting to get a bit tired. But these 5 guys that we'll have now are very, very cool. But I'm going to get started because I don't want you to stay for too long here. So the first one I'm calling is Gary Stewart. Gary? Hi, Gary. So he's going to talk about the case for corporate venture capital. Is that correct?
Yep. Hello?
Yeah. So the stage is yours for 10 minutes.
Okay.
Be awesome.
Cool, I'll try. All right, so I'm going to stand over here. Let's see if this works. Yeah. All right, cool. All right, so thanks for listening to us. I'll start basically with a picture. This is me. It was about, a long time ago. And the idea was that this was me when I was growing up in New York. I grew up actually in the Bronx in the United States. Luckily, afterwards, I kind of got access to some good schools. So I went to Yale College, where I studied political science. So earlier when Mike asked me what I planned to do in 80 years, and I said I had never know, this has really been the case of my life. I mean, first I was studying political science because I thought I wanted to be a politician. Then I went to law school, practiced litigation for a couple of years, before then moving on to becoming an IPO and M&A lawyer. And then finally, when I was in Spain at that point, then they said to me, well, we think that you should move to a local salary, because at that point they were still paying me as an expat. I decided to become an entrepreneur. And that was when, in 2006 I started my first company. It was a property search engine. We raised about 4 million euros in financing. The company is still existing today. It's still in Spain. But just after 5 years, I kind of decided, well, I'd like to try something else. So I moved to Madrid, where I taught at a business school, IE Business School in Madrid. I ran their accelerator program and also taught entrepreneurship. Before one day, all of a sudden, I got a call from Telefonica, and they said, we're going to start an accelerator, and we'd like you to run it in Spain. And I said to them, no, I'm not interested in working for Telefonica. I'm not interested in working for any kind of corporate. And I think that what I found that as I was preparing for this speech is that this is kind of a generalized sentiment, even many years afterwards. So this is an article that I found in TechCrunch from this past summer saying corporate accelerators are an oxymoron, meaning that basically they don't make any sense. This is another article that I found in tech.eu saying corporate startups, the good, the bad, and the plain ugly, and the majority of the article spoke about the ugly parts of corporate acceleration. And I think a lot of it has to do with this idea, which is that people get really afraid whenever they see a big guy trying to partner with a little guy. They just don't think it makes any sense, and they somehow think that the little guy is always going to end up getting screwed. I think a part of it as well is that entrepreneurs like to think of themselves as like really cool. Everyone is kind of like a Neo in training, the one that's going to fight the world from the big, bad, ugly guy in a suit, here represented by Mr. Agent Smith, I think his name was. So the idea is that you don't really want to mix. The idea is that the corporate is the enemy that really doesn't make any sense for you to liaise with. And I think, lastly, when I was thinking about this, a big part of the problem as well is that a large part of the mythology of entrepreneurship has to do with this idea of disruption. And who are you going to disrupt if it's not for the big, bad corporate that's making all that money, and that you are going to try and get some of it from them and make the world a better place by basically killing Microsoft or Apple or Google. So these were the top 4 critiques that I found of corporate accelerators. The first one is that corporate accelerators have undue influence, meaning that somehow or another they're going to try and shape the innocent startup into something that the startup shouldn't have become. And also, usually they say, well, there's no interest alignment between the startup and the accelerator because the accelerator is not taking any kind of an equity stake. It's kind of weird because if you do something for free, people say that's bad, but if you take equity, they also say that's kind of bad. In the case of Wira, which is where I work, we do take an equity stake precisely because we do want there to be this interest alignment. The second argument people say is that startups are not the corporate's core business, so the corporate is only really doing it as some sort of a marketing scheme or some sort of CSR project, corporate social responsibility, and that as soon as they get bored or as soon as they have some kind of real issue, they're going to forget about the startups who are going to end up getting screwed again. In the case of Wayra, this hasn't been quite the case because, as I'm going to explain later, I think that there's been a kind of shift in the market where corporates are realizing that the reason to support entrepreneurs or entrepreneurship has nothing to do with marketing, but more to do with the survival of the corporate itself. The third argument is that, if there are too many deep-pocketed corporate accelerators, then the real accelerators are somehow going to get screwed as well. Again, this argument, I think it's kind of really strange because I remember at the very beginning when I was working at the business school and we called up Paul Graham in the US to kind of come and speak at our conference. He basically said, I can't come to speak because I'm really, really busy, but what I think is that you guys should try to copy our model in Spain where you are right now. So if the guy who's kind of like the most famous and the originator of this idea is inspiring people to use it in kind of open source way, it's kind of weird now that the accelerators that have been developed over the last few years somehow seem to think that they have some sort of intellectual property over the concept. And lastly, they say corporate accelerators still don't have a lot of traction, but at the end of the day, as someone pointed out in one of the panels before, corporate accelerators like Wayra have only been around for 2 to 3 years. It's the same thing with any startup. The cycle really has to be judged on a 7 to 10 year basis because that's how long it takes for any kind of startup, whether it be a corporate or a traditional startup, to really kind of be able to demonstrate real traction. So why, at the end, if I kind of thought Telefonica was kind of this big evil monster, because at that point I was still in my kind of startup phase, why did I join? Well, because some of my friends in Spain said, you're kind of stupid. Look at how big of a company it is. So Telefonica has access to about 316 million customers worldwide, and last year they had revenue of about 58 billion euros, or 57 billion euros. So it's a pretty massive company. And again, one of the things that I asked when I first came in is, what is your motivation for doing this? And actually, Telefonica didn't really, I think, explain it to me. It was basically this slide from a partner at PricewaterhouseCoopers who came to visit us, a partner from Silicon Valley, who came and he said, it was about 2011, he said, the global economy remains uncertain. This is when everyone was talking about bailouts of Europe, bailout of everything. The US economy still wasn't kind of where it needed to be. And I was like, okay, that's weird. But then he said, but over half of about 85% of the CEOs think that their own growth company is going to grow. And they understood that the only way to grow the company was by developing new business models, introducing new products and services, or changing their existing products and services. So at the end of the day, I think corporates owe a lot to Steve Jobs because they started to realize that if you can't start to iterate like Apple, if you can't start to think about how you're going to be relevant as we move ahead in kind of a very technologically advancing world, basically you might end up like Kodak, which is dead. So the idea, I think, is that corporates started to realize that it's not only about helping startups because it's a nice, pretty picture that you're going to have on your wall, but also because at the end of the day, if you're a company like Telefonica, what you start to realize is companies like WhatsApp all of a sudden kill all of your SMS business. That's kind of taking away a whole line of business. You have companies like Skype that also remove your roaming business because people no longer call long distance. They just FaceTime or they call on Skype. So you have to basically figure out how you're going to stay relevant going forward, and it becomes about pure survival. And what you do have at your disposal is lots of money, 64 billion in revenue last year, and access to a lot of customers. So why don't you figure out how to work with the startups when they're still young, before they become, startups grow really, really quickly. So when they're still in that very, very early stage, when they're trying out their ideas, why not work with them then? It's probably going to be a lot cheaper than trying to acquire them for $19 billion. So I think this is a problem because today a lot of people have been talking about, Lebanon and how the ecosystem is and whether or not, it's strong and comparing it to Silicon Valley, et cetera, et cetera. Well, I also, being American, I guess, I kind of look at the comparison between the US and Europe. So this is an article that was in The Economist about 2 summers ago, and what they basically said is that if you look from 1950 to 2007 at which countries or continents created the biggest companies, basically in the US it was 52 big companies created, and in Europe only 12 were created. So what that basically means is that Europe, as I said, has a problem of entrepreneurship. If you can't kind of foment entrepreneurship, then basically you're not going to be able to compete in the global economy as Europe is finding out right now. So this is what we do. At the end of the day, it's basically all about providing a physical space where entrepreneurs have their own modules. They stay with us for about 10 months. They get 40,000 euros in exchange for, as I said before, 5 to 10% of the equity. We have academies in pretty much all of the countries where Telefonica has an operating business. So that basically means 7 countries in Latin America and 5 countries in Europe. And we've invested a bit of money in all of these different startups. So again, even from a business intelligence point of view, just kind of knowing what the future trends are going to look like, we've already seen, these numbers are kind of outdated, 25,000 applications. That gives us a lot of business intelligence as to what's exactly happening in the market, being able to then kind of compare it to how this is playing out across all the different markets where we have business. We've invested about, at this point, about 15 million in about 500 startups. And Telefonica is kind of even clamping down on this. The idea now is to figure out how we can support entrepreneurs throughout the entire system, from the very beginning, co-working spaces, which we're doing, piloting in Spain in the moment, all the way up to a fund that we're going to launch next year in the US, which would be a few hundred million, to kind of make sure that we're staying relevant, figuring out which are going to be the next Skypes and WhatsApps, or any kind of business that can be relevant to our business. One caveat I have to make here, though, is since this is complete open innovation, we don't restrict it to businesses that we know currently are of strategic interest to Telefonica. So we even have like a lesbian dating site as one of the companies that we've invested in. But in general, we do keep one of the KPIs as being whether or not the company has a fit with Telefonica. So to kind of contrast this to the panel that we had before about accelerators, what I think is it doesn't really make that much sense to compare corporate accelerators with traditional accelerators. To me, it's like comparing the iPad with the iPhone. And I remember when Steve Jobs first came out and he said, you know, he was kind of pitching the iPad, and people were like, why do you need it? If you have the iPhone and if you have, you know, the kind of MacBook Air or whatever, why do you need a third category? And he's like, because there's enough space and this does something that's completely different. And I think that what we do that's different is, well, first of all, what do we do that's the same is we also make sure that we benchmark like what our top competitors in the UK ecosystem, in my case, are doing in terms of financing. So we're making sure that we help our startups to get financing. But we also can do something that very few other accelerators can do, which is to give startups access to real customers and real clients. And so we see this, that even some of the biggest funds in Europe will eventually come back to us and they say, you know, how can we get you guys to work with our startups? Because when Spotify, for example, had difficulty penetrating the Spanish market in terms of premium services, they struck a deal with Telefonica. When Evernote decided that they wanted to kind of get greater access in the European market, they struck a deal with Telefonica. So what we're trying to do basically is to say, okay, well, it's great that these big companies are striking deals with Telefonica, but how about if we can help our startups to scale up by giving them access to those same opportunities? And so this is one example, which is a company called Dautissima. It was a guy who was a venture partner at DFJ Esprit, which is a fund based in the UK in Paris, and basically came up to us and he said, I have an idea to create a health and beauty website, but I want to launch it in Latin America, specifically in Brazil. And I know that Telefonica has a really huge operation in Brazil. So we helped him to launch the website, and at this point, I think he has more than 8 million users, and at the same time, he's found that one of his biggest clients is actually Telefonica, because since it's in our strategic interest to foment e-health in Latin America, we're actually paying him, I think it's about $50,000 a month, to basically create branded content for us. So that's an example of a win-win, where right now he can kind of go to Silicon Valley, which is where he's at, and then tell the investors there about the fact he's actually validated this model, thanks in large part to the agreement with Telefonica. So that's been a brief explanation as to kind of why I think that corporate accelerators are here to stay and actually have an important role to play in the ecosystem. Thanks for your time, and if you have any questions, I'll be around later.
Thank you. Stay there for just one question. Come on, at least.
All right.
There's a lot of, and you listed them, a lot of critiques about corporate accelerators. At the same time, come on, in the startup world, just corporates in general gets a lot of slack because, you know, we don't like corporates. I do work with a lot of them. Maybe the question I have is that you have a good blueprint here of what you do at Wera, but I'm still seeing when I talk to other, and I'm not asking you to make any comparison or to throw anyone under the bus, but I'm still seeing a lot of resistance from corporates that they see, okay, they're still in the phase like, oh, we should do that for marketing purposes because it's nice and because innovation, because startups, you know, all these buzzwords added together, that makes this the case for an accelerator, but they're starting to get serious about it, but they just don't know how to do it, how to build it. So what would you recommend if anyone here wants to build a corporate accelerator from a corporate? what would you recommend as the basic, there was a recipe website as the basic ingredients to make it work?
I would say hello? Okay, thanks. I would say the same thing. I remember when I was a startup entrepreneur myself, they were saying you have to kind of like reason by analogy, right? So what I would do is actually look at the models that are working, figure out what's not working, and how to optimize it. So what we're seeing in Telefonica, for example, is that all of the other telcos worldwide are coming to us to figure out how they can either partner with us or how they can actually improve upon the model that we've created. I think that's a good thing. Look at what's working, look at what's not working, and come up with a better model. But in general, I would say that it got to the point last year that so many corporates were coming to us figuring out how to partner that at the end of the day, we even thought about how to make this into a separate business line, because you're right, all of the corporates are thinking about it because it's a matter of survival of the fittest. And if they can't figure out how to evolve, they all know that they will die.
Thank you. Give him a round of applause. Thank you very much. Our next speaker, Mario, you can come on stage whenever you want, Mario. It's actually funny, this is the first time I met him today, and I was talking to him earlier today, and I realized that he lives in Manila. I used to live in Manila, and if we were living at the same time, we would actually be neighbors, because he lives exactly across the street from where I used to live. Is Mario ready? Come on stage. Here's your mic.
Sorry, I'm very shy. So.
Yeah, you're very shy. You gotta see he's not shy at all. Come on, encourage him. Come on, please. Thank you.
Okay, so let's talk about sales. Who of you here is in a sales job or as a sales function? Pretty ladies, etc. Who thinks sales is important? Okay, that's nearly 100%. Let me all tell you, either you are an accountant or a real salesman, you're all in sales. Everything is about selling. There is nothing else. And I didn't bring you this to show you the ABC, always be closing, because it's very cheesy. It was very cool 40 years ago. I didn't bring you here to tell you the ABC. Because what people do not understand is that sales are just a result of multiple closures. Sales is just a result. The sales itself is not a closure. Getting a meeting with you is a sales. Getting your attention is a sales. Getting a contract negotiation is another sales. So there are all little steps you need to micromanage in order to ultimately close the sales. So that's the true meaning of closing the sales. So for instance, I was working for Rocket Internet, the so-called dark empire in the startup world. And now I'm unemployed. And what do? I build companies in Asia, right? So how do I get attention of people? Like this. Like this. So that's my business card. I build companies in Asia. So these automatically help me qualifying the lead and get his attention. Because if I hand over my business card to someone, and this someone is interested in building a company in Asia, I get his attention. I have a closure right there, right there. If someone is not interested in building a company in Asia, why should I spend my time on him? Why should he spend his time with me, right? So that's a closure. But let's break this down a little bit. The very first sales is with yourself. Visualizing it, it's very powerful. This is how it works. You have to really visualize what you want. There is a lot of techniques, but simply put a fucking image in your head and make it happen. This is how it works. Second, the mindset factor, because if you're visualizing it, the mindset works. It's just the synapses are working completely different. And it has been studied, like in psychology, if you visualize something, you're most likely gonna get it, because really the whole body, the whole energy goes towards this direction. Enthusiasm and perseverance. Sales is like hitting on a girl in a club. I'm not joking. And you only look about one thing. Is she hot or not? That's it, right? That's the only thing you will look when you try to hit on a girl in a club. And you have 10 seconds to approach her with something funny, okay, to get her attention, okay? And that's perseverance and mindset. And believe me, I do this a lot, okay? Successfully. So sales is also a form of persuasion. Even my cleaning lady had to kind of sell herself to me to be hired. Even if you go through an interview process for an accountant position, you're selling yourself. It's self-branding. Because you are competing with other people and there's only one position. Why should I hire someone which are equally qualified, a pool of equally qualified people? Which one I'm gonna hire? The person that strikes me as the best, has best personality. I believe he's enthusiastic as a hell when he talks to me. Like, that's absolutely normal. When you compete with other candidates for the same position, you're all equally qualified. The only difference is job interview, right? Because paper don't lie. But a job interview, the only difference, it's you. So it's the mindset factor, it's the perseverance, and the enthusiasm. And that's bring to self-branding. Now, you also have to understand that sales are the fuel of any single organization, big, small, or gigantic. Because you can have a great product, a great customer service, but if you do not have sales, your company doesn't deserve to exist. So keep this in mind. Are you hot or not? That's all that matters. These are the 6 rules of persuasion. There is a very nice video on YouTube, put the 6 rules of persuasion, but let me summarize, these are just 6, but I strongly suggest you to look at the video because he gives a nice visual about it. So the first is reciprocity, which in Asia is very important. That's where I live, because reciprocity is the base of relationship. I give you something and you owe me. I want you to owe me one, okay? Most of the time, how I build relationship in Asia is I do favor to people for free because I don't need to get money from them right away. But before, after, I'm gonna ask for a favor. And I want a lot of people to owe me something. And this is called reciprocity. Scarcity is one of the first principles. Why, when there are economic rebounds, in Manhattan, house prices going down, but then rebounds and goes up again. Because Manhattan, it's a closed island. You cannot build islands anymore, right? There is no ground to build anymore. So there is very scarcity of land, and it's a very important place. So scarcity, when something is perceived as scarce, is automatically more valuable. The video here, in this video, they will show you the Concorde flight. So when Air France and British Airways, they announced they will cancel the Concorde flight because it was not economically making sense anymore, sales went just crazy up. Like, they couldn't fulfill anymore. The website was literally crashed for a couple of hours because people were just buying tickets because it was perceived as scarce. Authority, that's bullshit, okay? That's a lot of crap. Because I consider myself a sales specialist, sales expert. Why? Because it's written in my LinkedIn, because I can write it on my business card, because I go invited in conference to talk about sales. So yeah, I'm an authority, okay? Try to be an authority. People have to trust you. Consistency. You have to gain throughout the meeting, throughout the sales process, throughout the phone call, the email, whatever is your sales process, you have to gain little consensus one by one. Because if someone says, are you looking for a car? Great, so that's the problem for you. When you try to close the sales, the guy cannot tell you anymore, well, I'm actually not looking for a car. So what do you mean? You told me you looked for a car a second ago. It's very difficult to be inconsistent, okay? So that's something you have to seek throughout the sales process. Liking. It's obvious that people, they like to do business with other people that are similar. They pay compliments, okay? They feel comfortable to do business with. And then there is consensus. There is you have to justify your action and helping throughout the sales process when you're trying to close the sales with the so-called analogs. The analogs are people or companies that do something similar that you want to sell to the guy. People just feel more comfortable if Microsoft is, I don't know, investing in a country, investing for another company, investing in the same country, it's easier because Microsoft is doing it, right? It's a big company. So people like analogs. If someone is doing it, it's an easier sale. The rules of engagement when you do a sales. Always qualify the lead. Do not sell car to people that are looking to buy a car. You always have to have the so-called qualifying question. We're going to talk about this in a moment. Avoid people with limiting beliefs. Limiting beliefs are things in people's mind that will not allow you to close the sales. This is, you understand when you do the qualifying, okay? So you're not going to go to someone that doesn't want to buy a car because there's a limiting belief that he doesn't need a car right now. That's why you need to qualify the lead. You have to forecast overcoming objection. Most of the time is price, time of delivery of a product or service, and the product itself. Okay, so you try to forecast in advance the overcoming objection. And price is not a good place to be, so never try to compete on price, because if you bring down your price immediately, the value automatically is perceived as lower, there is no scarcity, and you are not a figure of authority. So all the 6 rules I mentioned before, they are completely wiped out. You have to sound enthusiastic and sharp, okay? It makes a hell of a difference. I mean, everything I did, okay, is just by talking, okay? I do not have an MBA. I do not understand accounting. I don't have hard asset in me. But all the companies I built for Rocket Internet in Asia, even selling the dream to the employees, was because I was enthusiastic as hell when I was doing it. It makes a hell of a difference. You have to deliver the power state, no? Confidence, certainty, and clarity. You need to really know your product. Let me give you an example. Paul is gonna love it. So in Manila, there are a lot of real estate brokers. So any hot girls just turn into a real estate broker. So they just chase foreigners trying to sell them a $150,000 condo. And when you first arrive in Manila, you don't know it, right? But it happens all over Asia. So I made a terrible mistake of giving my business card to one of those girls, and the day after I started receiving emails and phone calls, etc., I've been invited to event to show a condo unit. When I arrived there, I kind of understand this whole commoditized world of real estate brokers down there. So I asked specific questions about the apartment. So what kind of tails they're gonna use? When is the delivery? She had no idea. Her job was just to bring me into the room. No idea about the product whatsoever. So really have to understand the product inside out. Measure and pivot. This is very common also in technology. So you analyze what it works and you understand what it doesn't work. Okay? And also this is in lead gen, for instance. So there are marketing channels that works really well, but do not just concentrate everything in one marketing channel. Analyze what works and what it doesn't. In Easy Taxi, for instance, which is the company I built for Rocket in Asia, we had launched multiple campaigns at the same time, either on Facebook or Google and offline, and we just get it in data. And then, of course, we then investing more on the channel they were converting better. So measure and pivot. Manage the transition. And this is throughout the meeting, right? So when you talk to someone, okay, before even initiating the actual sale, and when you qualify him, you gather intelligence. This intelligence, it has to be used, I don't say against the other person, because at the end is a financial transaction, but it has to be used in your advantage. And a typical managing transition is, okay, so based on what you told me, this is the perfect product for you. Because if you're looking for a car, which is between $20,000 and $40,000, which is red, or you want it, there is a lot of sun, so it's white, etc. So based on what you told me, this is the perfect product. That's a fantastic transition. Because again, people cannot say, oh, I don't need a car. What do you mean? You told me you need a car, right? So people cannot go back. And never say money aside, because money is never aside. Money is a very important component of a sale. So I have sometimes somebody that try to close me. Okay, so Mario, money aside, do you like the product? What do you mean money aside? So you're gonna give it for free? Of course not. So never say money aside. That's bullshit. Fail to prepare, prepare to fail. That's something that happens very, very often. People arrive completely unprepared to a sales meeting. When I walk in a sales meeting, I know everything about the company, their business, and the person I'm talking to. I look at him on Facebook. I look what he likes on Facebook. Just when I want to date a girl, it's the same. So if I know a girl that likes a movie, I'm going to watch the movie before dating her. So I have higher chances to succeed, okay? You have to arrive prepared to a meeting like there is not tomorrow. How do you prepare? So there are two kind of preparations. The empirical, when you study the actual company, industry, know their competitors, know their regulatory frameworks that they can have. And then there is the emphatic research that goes toward the person. If you're meeting someone, most likely has a LinkedIn. Spy on his LinkedIn. Look who is connected. Maybe he's connected with a friend. Let me give you an example. In Asia, sorry, I keep saying Asia because that's my area of focus. Before talking about business, will take you some months. Before actually talking about business, asking for business. But you have to meet him months before because it's relationship-based. But when you walk in a meeting and you see a picture of a dog on the desk of someone, it's very easy for me because I love dogs. So I will talk about dogs for hours. That's a way to break the ice and engage the person. Do not talk about the weather. If someone walks in my office and said, yeah, today it's rainy, get the fuck out of my office. Right, Lita, get the fuck out of my office. Please do not talk about the weather. So once you are prepared, you also need to make sure that you are talking to the right people. most of the time, you're talking to the wrong people because you want to pitch a product and you're talking to someone from tech department. Why would you talk to someone from tech department? So you have to make sure that you know who the decision maker is and what is the decision-making process. That comes at the end. Okay, so you are perfectly prepared. Now it comes the meeting. The perfect sales meeting is 45 minutes, no 1 hour, 45 minutes. Why? Because there are certain things that need to happen throughout the meeting. First of all, you have a chit-chat. Okay, you talk about the dog. If he has all this trophy about golf, learn about golf. Understand what handicap is. I hate golf. I had to learn about golf just to talk about golf with certain people. So you sit down and you need to have a script in your mind. You need to have a script, but shame on you if you have a script. My name is Mario Berta. I work for Rocket Internet and Easy Taxi. No, it has to be fluent. Okay, you really have to dominate the pitch. You have to dominate the pitch. So you sit down and you have the qualifying question. You need to make sure that the person in front of you is the person you want to talk to because he's the decision maker and wants to buy the product you want to sell. There is no point to move ahead. So qualify the lead. The sales structure is throughout the meeting, you introduce yourself, your company, and your product in that order. Qualifying questions, yourself, your product, your company. Sorry, your company, your product. You always have to be very straightforward on how your product or your service is going to benefit the counterpart. Is it going to make your process cheaper or your delivery faster? Is going to increase customer experience? Is going to solve real problems? You always have to make crystal clear what are the benefits of your product and services. Try to translate everything into dollar and cents. Saving time is easy to translate into dollar and cents because you have less working hours and you pay the employees, whatever, $8 an hour. By using this process, they save 10 hours of job, $80 saving. That's every day. Per 100 days, that's $800, okay? So always try to translate everything into dollar and cents. It's easier to understand. Analogs, again, I really emphasize this. People feel more comfortable to go where other people already went, okay? So everybody feels very comfortable to go to Thailand in Asia because Thailand has a fantastic campaign in tourism. Most of the people went to Thailand and they're perfectly normal. When they say talking to Manila, oh my God, it's such a dangerous place, which is absolutely not true. The problem is there are no analogs. Not many people go to the Philippines, but a lot of people go to Thailand. Okay, so people feel comfortable to go where other people have been. Closing. At the end of the meeting, most likely, depending on your product or service, you're not going to close the sales right there. You're not going to close the sales right there. But you have to understand the decision-making process, and you have to understand how long it will take and who is involved in the decision-making process. Understand, having clarity on what's the next step, it's the most important things when you do your closure. Because most of the people say, yeah, okay, so we talk. What do you mean? We talk when? Okay. If the guy is vague, guide him. Let's say, so how about, can I follow with you Tuesday, 10 a.m.? You're going to most likely say yes, or going to tell you, no, let's do next week. Okay, so Wednesday, 10 a.m., yes or no? Yes, great. So you are entitled to call him Tuesday at 10 a.m. He cannot be bothered by your call because he authorized you to call you at 10 a.m. So always try to micromanage each single process of the way. Time, dress code, and material. I have slides about this. So be punctual. It's a sign of professionalism. Like, traffic is never an excuse. Traffic is everywhere in the world. So when people come to me and they are even 3 minutes late and they say, sorry, there was traffic, leave 1 hour earlier. I don't care. This is how it works. This is how business works. So two very powerful tools. One is the smile. This is Guy Kawasaki's slide. He came out with what he called the Pan Am smile. So this is the fake smile that, you know, the hostess, like, bloody bastard, you're flying business, that's my whole year of salary. I hate you, motherfucker, I'm serving you coffee. That's the Pan Am smile, okay? The smile you want to have is this. That's the true smile. It's very easy to understand a fake smile from a true smile. And smile, especially for women, is a super powerful tool to close the sales. Super powerful. And then there is dress code. Okay. So that really depends country by country, but try to always dress appropriately. You guys know, tech people don't wear suits. No need to wear suit. Tech people, they're having polos. Mark Zuckerberg, when he went to Wall Street, insulted the whole Wall Street with his hoodie when he was asking for money. He doesn't care. Okay, technology is polos. Banking is suits. Huh? Gentlemen's on the front. Banking is suits. So, am I hot or not on this? Yes? Good. Ladies, I'm going to post my number, huh? Okay? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Oh, that was strong. I totally agree with you. I'm not sure about, you mentioned the story about the Concorde and people just crying and crashing the website. I'm not sure that would happen if Alitalia was about to go down, right? Well,
it went down multiple times.
Yeah, exactly. So, maybe one question? What's the craziest? I mean, you're typically a salesman, right? So, what's the craziest story that you yourself had to do to close something?
Yeah, I get it. I mean, I have many, I'm sure, because I've been selling advertising in emerging countries, like in Africa, etc. And the crazy stories are always in Africa. So I slept in the Luanda port. Luanda is the capital of Angola. I slept in the Luanda port for 24 hours to get a contract done because nothing moves in Angola, right? It's a state-owned enterprises. And all my competitors had this contract, this advertising contract from this client. It just doesn't exist that I didn't have it, right? So I slept in the Luanda port for 24 hours, like in 2 chairs, like this,
in front of the client.
Yeah, and then if you bring cake to the secretaries, they're so happy they let you stay, no problem.
I agree.
You know? So
I agree. And I can see. Thank you. You can applaud him. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And you can see that you've been living in Asia because a lot of what you're actually telling me, don't worry, I'll give it to Hafez. A lot of what you're actually telling me is very true. Being on time, I'm also Swiss, so being on time for me, there's the article the other day, look it up if you can find it. It's like, if you're not on time, you're just being rude. And I understand I'm in Lebanon, I'm also Greek. Greeks usually, we say, we have dinner at 8 and we show up at 11:30, but be on time for business. So now our next speaker, hello Hafez, Virjee, here's your microphone. Yes, do that, please. Thank you. I was looking at him, studying his notes backstage. I'm sure he's perfectly ready. De-risking startup, the stage is yours.
So, de-risking startups. You have a lawyer in front of you. What do you think I'm going to be talking about? Show of hands if you thought I'm going to be telling you about contracts, about registering your IP, or being careful you don't use someone else's wrongfully. How much I'm going to cost, tax optimization, right legal vehicle for your investment, or Lebanon startup ecosystem. Those are all valid points, and I'm going to touch upon some of them. But I'm going to take it for granted that you've got contracts, that your IP is registered, that you know what tax planning you need, you know what legal vehicles you need, and that you went to this morning's panel on Lebanon startup ecosystem. As for costs, okay. I'll just give you a figure, but my slides are not staggered. Okay. So as for costs, you tend to think of them as, I'm assuming, sunk costs, not necessarily as risk management. I'm going to give you a figure, £10,000 per annum. That's how much it costs British startups, on average, per year, as a result of legal costs and fines due to inadequate legal risk management. That's a result of a survey that was conducted earlier this year on 250 British tech startups. This afternoon, we're going to look at how we can improve legal risk management and therefore value. And specifically, I'm going to be telling you about how to make safer exits and therefore stronger relationships. So, quick run through modes of exit of a contractual relationship. I'm assuming you're familiar with these, but otherwise, you can get out of a contract by performing it, so standard sale and purchase. Through expiry, natural end of an NDA. Transfer, if you're spinning off part of your business. Termination by agreement. You've seen neither clauses in shareholder agreements. Termination for breach, I'll be coming back to that. And sometimes there was no agreement in the first place. So, the first point to note, briefly, I'm going to assume that you're familiar with this. This is not enough just to have a contract. The contract needs to clearly spell out who is doing what, when, and why. And a party should also cater in their contract for how to exit. Now, I know that some of you are thinking it's not realistic to try and make deals if you're thinking about how those are going to come to an end. But you do this already when you negotiate liquidation preferences and term sheets. What this does is to give everyone greater certainty and therefore make the deal stick better. Now, what happens when there's a contract breach? Put your guns out. You're going to sue them. You're going to show them. You're going to watch an episode of Suits or The Good Wife, feel better, and then you're going to come back to the realization of what we all know. Time is money, and litigation and arbitration are too long. The time you get a final decision in England and Wales takes over a year. As of the start of this year, it took 54 weeks for a case to go to trial in England. And that's just going to trial, then you still don't have a decision yet. As for arbitration, it takes at least a year to get roughly to the same spot. But with the difference that it's not appealable. Now, I'll just take a quick break here. I'm assuming you're not familiar with arbitration, so I'll run through what arbitration is. It's like litigation that is binding, and the final decision, which is known as an award, is enforceable like a court judgment. It's different from litigation because you need to put an arbitration clause into your contract to gain access to arbitration. But once you've done that, the parties can choose the law that applies to their contract, the procedure in case of dispute, whether to keep arbitration confidential. There is no appeal. There's only very limited recourse. And once you have an award, you can take it to most places around the world and get it enforced. So back to our initial question. You have a contract breach, what happens? Well, you're not going to pursue litigation and arbitration because of time and cost, unless you're sitting on a gold mine, or if you absolutely want to be proven right, which is a possibility. But for most of us, we're going to look to try and negotiate, maybe get a mediation to get to a negotiated settlement. Otherwise, the startup can take the hit, or it goes under. Whatever the answer, you're going to move on. Does this have unintended consequences? Well, since my whole slides are coming up. What we're saying is that most contracts, most of the time, don't have any teeth. They are binding on paper, but that's pretty much it. It's good to have them when you're preparing a data room, if you're looking for funding, but otherwise, it's all about reputation. Sign a good contract, you want everyone to know. Your contract going rough, it looks like it's going to turn the wrong way, turn sour. You're going to want to keep as quiet as possible, especially if the parties are getting irrational. So are you just wasting legal fees and getting the contract drafted in the first place? Now, those £10,000 wasted as a result of inadequate legal risk management are looking like a lot more. Does it have to be so? There's a trend towards greater efficiency in dispute resolution. Courts are trying to streamline procedures. Arbitral institutions are issuing new rules with more emphasis on cost efficiency, on time, and they're even trying to innovate with emergency arbitrators for interim measures. But time remains an issue, as we saw earlier. It takes about a year for you to get anywhere. And then there's DDoS dispute resolution, which has taken an innovative approach to arbitration, which is backed by some of the leading names in the field. And the system is designed so that arbitrators can issue decisions on the main issues within roughly 2 to 6 months, depending on the amount in dispute. It's the fastest system in the industry by multiples. And who says less time, says less cost. Now, if you have access to an effective system for the resolution of disputes that is adapted to your industry, be it DDoS or someone else, it means your contracts have a lot more teeth. And if they have teeth, then you have reduced your transactional risk, which also means that you have to reduce the company's risk profile. But there's more. If you've done all that, if you've got a system that means that you can resolve disputes very fast, well then there's greater incentive to reach an agreement, to negotiate and settle your disputes. So you got now a sense of the saving in terms of time and cost you can achieve if you think through dispute resolution carefully. I'll conclude by putting up 2 quotes from Senior Litigation Counsel at General Electric, and thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. Maybe the question I would have for you is, I mean, it's a topic that not a lot of startups like to think about, because even though we talk about, oh, failing is okay, nobody actually realized that failing might come from some legal framework or from people actually think their failing will be because of the product. So maybe the question I have for you is how easy is it for you to actually talk to startups and get them to actual reality that we have legal frameworks that you have to find ways to, because it's not the first thing you think about when you do a startup. You just don't give a shit, sorry for the term, you just don't care at the beginning, and especially with this whole dogma of breaking the rules. So anyway, so how do you approach startups? Do you see it's a difficult thing to do for you or not?
Well, everybody wants more certainty, because that's what allows you to predict your business. So when I'm talking to a startup, that's what I'll tell them. I'll tell them 2 things. Greater certainty, because you know that you have something that meets your needs at the end. And second, it's adapted to your needs, because it's quick.
It's quick. Ladies and gentlemen, please applaud him. Thank you so much. And I'm expecting my new speaker that I haven't seen yet. So Till, is he? Oh, here he is. Oh, I wasn't sure you were backstage. I'll give you my microphone. He took it away with the other one. No, don't be sorry. That's okay. Oh, Samer saves the day.
Even better. Thank you very much.
So according to Mario that you heard before about closing sales, I look like a banker. It looked like a techie. Or is that, I don't know.
This is just a look.
Okay, the stage is yours.
All
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And R and ahoy. So this is how we are. Yeah. So this is how we say hi in Cologne. I'm Till. I'm the CEO and co-founder of the European Pirate Summit and Exec.io. So CEO and co-founder of Pirate Summit and Exec.io. So what we do is we organize invitation-only and exclusive events for startups and venture capitalists all across Europe. Why invitation-only? So we started in 2011 as a very small conference, invited our friends, and we wanted to scale and wanted to get the word of the Cologne ecosystem to all the people in London, to Paris, to get some international VCs to Cologne. So we invited and spread the word about the conference, and it somehow took off. So Mike was writing about it on TechCrunch. Robin Wouters was writing at that time for The Next Web, and so on. It grew a bit, and at 2012, I decided to make it a full-time job. And so Pirate Summit grew to right now 1,500 people, all of them hand-selected, and all of them are on the right page, on the same page. They have gone through the same shit. They have gone to the same roller coaster of starting their startup, their idea. And Exec.io is basically the more serious event we organize. It's a very much more exclusive conference than the Pirate Summit. It's a bit more for the later stage companies. It's where we connect the startups and the VCs we have from the Pirate Summit and connect them with the corporate executives. So there's a huge demand on the corporate perspective on how they can be part of the ecosystem in Europe, and we're trying to build this kind of bridge to bridge this gap. So, but I'm not here to talk about the Pirate Summit and Exec.io. Just a few impressions of, just a few impressions of how it will look like. All right, so this is Mike. This year, and this is the Burning Man we have, and this is we like fire. But I'm here to talk to you about how to network and prepare for events. So I've seen and organized and been to, I guess, 150 or even more events across Europe, all of them focused on startups. And I've seen a lot of mistakes going to be made in the preparation time, afterwards in the follow-up, during the event. And I was just thinking, I think it makes sense to write down the most important things, how to prepare and how to make the best out of it for conferences like this or other events. So the first thing is you have to remember you're always missed by the team and your clients at home. So you have to make a very good decision of why you're here and why are you spending your time here and not in the office or at your clients or making cold sale or whatever is your business goal at the moment. So you always have the cost of traveling to conferences, like hotel, flights, and so on. It's almost always minimum 1,000 euros, maybe even more. So tickets for some conferences even are 1K if you don't have any contact. And on the other side, the opportunity cost. So you have to make sure that there's a return on investment on each conference. And the easiest way to find it out, would it make sense to attend, for example, the Pirate Summit or the BDL Accelerate here in Beirut, is what is my most important business goal at the moment? Is it funding? Is it getting a first impression of the ecosystem because I have no idea what's happening? By the way, it's a very nice effect on people who are attending their first conference and they're going to the Pirate Summit. It's like this kind of a what the fuck moment. If you see the pictures with the robots and the fire and right across the biggest brother in Europe, at their first event, it might be very interesting for them. So it's just like it highly depends on the kind of goal you are currently aiming for. So let's take, for example, some funding. You're looking for funding. What stage are you in? Are you funded by business angels? Are you bootstrapping? Are you looking for a seed? Are you Series A? Whatever. Make sure that you have a very good idea and rough estimation of what you're looking for in terms of funding, and then select the events. So there are very, very many calendars. Tech.eu. Mike Butcher is going to publish a list every year, or I think he published a list of the events he thinks it's worth going to. And you should check out these events. They are, almost every event has its own USP of why you should go there. Sometimes it's a lot of students, sometimes it's many Series A investors, sometimes it's the best way to expand to Russia or whatever. So it's highly depends on your business goal, and every event is different. So get an idea about what's the most important business goal at the moment. For example, funding, you go to NUA conference in London. For recruiting, you select the business schools in your area, or if you're looking for engineers, you're going to some engineer schools. If you're looking for funding, for example, for pre-seed or pre-Series A stage, then you might be able to go to events hosted by some accelerators like the demo days, even if you're not part of the accelerator batch. Get press. This is almost every event. There are some press people. Potential customers, you go to very selected, targeted audience conferences. So so every event has the USP, and you have to choose it by the definition of the biggest return on investment of each event. So your job is to do the necessary preparation, and this will look like this. You have to make sure that you know your pitch you're going to present to the people you're in the audience. If you're going to be on stage, you have to be very, very sure what are you talking about. You have to make sure that the guy you're talking to get it within the first minute of your explanation, and it makes more interest. It makes it even more interesting to dive in deeper. And for that case, you have to have prepared an even deeper or even longer pitch deck, including maybe a demo of your startup, or a more sophisticated pitch deck. So depending on the kind of people you're talking to, the pitch might be adjusted, or might have to be adjusted, because VCs need to know some different insights than the press people, for example. So always make sure that you have run through all the potential talks you want to have at the conference. You have prepared in your mind, maybe with your business partner or a wingman, whatever. Secondly, if you have that fixed, you're going to be looking for the event apps. So I think there are right now 30 or 40 event apps. I get almost every week a new event notification, event app notification. The most famous ones are BizAbo or Mobile Event Guide. I think almost all events have something like that in place. So they have prepared an attendee list where you can just see who's coming, and then based on your business goal, based on what are you going to what you want to achieve, you will select the right people and fix dates to meet, or fix times to meet at the conference. Okay, so at the event, of course, you have to have business cards. You have to get them out. You have to get business cards from other people. Talk to every guy who might be interested in getting to know more about your startup. Please be just not rude. Don't behave like a normal person. Don't interrupt people when they're talking to other people. It's always good to have a wingman, as I already mentioned. It's much easier to get in touch with them. Even easier if he maybe already knows a few of your potential targets, so he can give you an introduction at the event. And for the hustlers, it's a special tip. There are many VIP dinners, speakers dinners, sponsor dinners, and as well, I hate myself for saying it, but if you're really interested in spreading the word about your startup and get the most out of it, you should go and try to get into this kind of dinners and whatever. So the follow-up is you have all these business cards and you need to instantly follow up with them, because I really hope that you left a very good impression, and it's within the first 7 days afterwards, it's the best time to follow up. They like you, they were interested in your product, in your pitch. So it's natural just to get in touch with them and set up the second or third call and then meeting wherever you're based. It's Skype or even personal again. So yeah, there are platforms for that: LinkedIn, Twitter, and if you don't do that, you're not hustling hard enough, and you're not a real startup. So thank you very much, and best of luck. See you later. And if you have any questions, let me know.
Thank you. Let's just stay there for a second. First of all, I love that line. There was a line we said, try to get into VIP dinners and everything. I mean, most people do not realize that, some of us here now, we're on stage and it's easy. But most of us, when we started, we had no freaking clue who any one of the organizers were. I was going to these big conferences and I was like, I don't have the cash to actually get in. How do I get in? And you would actually do that. And I talked to a startup one day. These guys are like, this is too expensive, Paul. I cannot come. I will not come. I said, come on, figure it out. Until the guy actually told me, if I come to the fire exit door, will you be opening it for me? I said, maybe, and of course I did. I didn't want to say that in front of the organizers, but I did not here, right? But you gotta figure it out. So maybe the question I have for you, because I see you mentioned these mobile apps that a lot more conferences use. They seem more often than not to be useless. I mean, you connect to a bunch of people that, do you see any use? And especially because you said it's your job to find a ways. Don't you think that a lot of these things here could actually be a startup?
So we've seen, like in the last 24 or maybe 36 months, popping up of these mobile event apps, connecting apps. I think it's not at the point where we say we are satisfied with the outcome of the event apps. But I think in the next 12 to 24 months, we will see a very, very nice opportunity to connect. Even what we already do is like to prepare a platform where you connect offline and get the matchmaking done. And I want to have this kind of event apps doing this as well, but of course offline, online, mobile. So I think in the next 12 to 24 months we will see a huge increase of potential business. An increase of usability of this kind of apps. So yeah, give them some time. It will be done at some point. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Please applaud him. Thank you. And now, last but not least, you've already seen him today on stage, Mr. Vitaly G, because that's the name he has on his T-shirt. Vitaly Golomb. Please applaud him.
Thank you. All right.
That's your clicker, by the way.
That is my clicker. All right, Beirut, are you ready to rock? Yeah, I can't hear you. All right, so it's Friday night. Everybody's a little sleepy, including me. But let's try to finish this off strong. So, startup here, startup now. So there are two types of people in this world, in the business world. There are corporate people and there are startup people, and these are two different kinds of people. All right, so corporate people are usually experts in one area. They spend years climbing the ladder. They also wear suits. We've seen lots of suits here. They have a stable lifestyle. They have real responsibilities, and they have life balance, right? But to do startups, these things don't usually work. Startup people are generalists. They're good at more than one thing usually, right? They get an early start. So I started in startups as an intern at the age of 13. In Silicon Valley, that's what happens. That's not very typical, but usually entrepreneurs really start in college or right before college, right? You've heard lots of stories. They have a cheap lifestyle, right? So it's very easy for them to do what it takes and not have to earn money right away, couch surf, whatever it takes to start a company. They have nothing to lose, and really nothing else matters. So this is really about hedging your bets and being safe versus putting your entire life on the line, your entire livelihood for your business, right? So if you have a family, this is a lot harder. All right, so think about this. There's two different kinds of people. This is why it's very difficult to make the switch later in your career from a corporate lifestyle where you're used to a certain type of lifestyle to startups. And what is a startup? Well, a startup is not a small version of a big company. A startup is an experiment in search of a business model. Think about that for a second, right? You cannot build systems around a business you don't know, right? You have to experiment and be quick about it. A startup is a company confused about who its product, who its customers are, what the product is, and how to make money. That is a startup. If you have answers to all these questions, it's no longer a startup. And as a startup founder, the default state is failure. If you don't do anything, nothing's going to happen, right? So your job is to unfail your startup. So why would you choose this career path for yourself? You must be crazy, right? So here's a normal career path. You get good grades in school. You get into a good college. You get into a good company, right? You get regular promotions, and in the US, you retire, you play golf, and then you die. That's normal career path, right? That's what your mother wants you to do. Well, in startups, if successful, right, you're going to get this, right? That's what you think is going to happen, up and to the right. Well, reality is a little bit different. This is what it really looks like if you're successful with a startup. So you got to be ready for this. You have to have alligator skin. You have to be tough. So entrepreneurship is a mental disorder, right? It is a mental disorder. But it takes a little bit of crazy to change the world, right? It's not for everybody. It's for a select few. So you have to be careful, and you have to know what you're getting yourself into. Now, the first thing you need to think about when you start a company, or when you want to start a company, is who is the customer and what is the problem you're solving? You don't just wake up one day and decide, I'm going to do a startup. And by the way, I hate that personally, doing a startup. You're not doing a startup, you're starting a startup. Right? I see this a lot of times, like engineers that come up with some kind of technology and then they're looking, for a problem to solve with it. To do it right, you have to do it in reverse. You have to find a painful problem and a customer and then solve that problem with whatever technology it takes. It's a much shorter path to success this way. All right? And it has to be a painful problem, not a vitamin. It's something that they can't live without. Something that changes their life fundamentally. If for no other reason that if you're going into an existing business and you're going to try to beat big companies doing business the same way they are doing it, you're never going to succeed. You have to come up with a completely new paradigm shift, a way of solving problems. And how can you be sure that it is a problem? Well, it has to be something that people are trying to solve right now. How is it currently being solved? Right? It doesn't have to be in the same way as you're trying to solve it. With every technological paradigm, you have a new way to solve the same old problems. Right? So before, let's say, first personal computers came out, late 70s, early 80s. Well, before you had to do accounting, let's say, on a piece of paper. Then you can do it on a computer. Then the internet came about, and you can do things online that you were only able to do on the desktop before. Then came mobile generation. You can do things in your pocket that you were only able to do online before. On and on and on and on. It's the same problems over and over again being solved with new technology platforms. If you come out on stage and you're pitching your startup and say, well, we have no competitors, and you have a smile on your face, you're screwed. Because no competitors equals no problem equals no business, no market, right? You always have competitors. If nobody is solving this, you better think twice. Odds are you're not the smartest person in the world. Odds are that this is not a problem, and it's only your imagination. Now, think about this. You always want to be different, right? But you don't want to be different just for the sake of being different. You want to be different and better. And in a way that you can describe to a person that doesn't understand, doesn't know your industry from the inside, they need to understand, and it needs to be very obvious to them that you're much better. Not incrementally better, but much better. If you want to beat somebody, you have to be twice as good at half the price. And you're looking for a big market. Why? Because chances are you will take a small portion of it. And if you're building a scalable startup, the odds of success are so low that the prize has to be just as big, right? If you're going to chase something that has a very small chance of success, the reward has to be just as big. So you have to play in a big market. And it helps a lot if that market is growing fast, because a high tide will lift all the boats, a rising tide. Right? That means that if you get into an industry that's growing 20% per year, guess what? You don't have to do much to grow 20% per year. If you're going into an industry, I don't care how big it is, and it's not growing or it's shrinking, you have to fight existing big companies in that space for any kind of market share. It's a lot harder. And early on, your main ingredient is team. So focus on that. Right? So a great startup team, as an investor, what I look for is 3 components. First, you need to understand the business that you're in. You need to understand it better than the average smart person, right? Because why are you going to succeed with this business? Why are you not going to be the person that spends a year, 2 years of investor money trying to learn this business before you can do anything good there, right? Why are you uniquely qualified to solve this problem? Of course, you have to be able to build the solution, right? Engineering is key. When we're talking about software, we're talking about hardware, you need to be able to build it. You cannot outsource your core business, which is the product. You can maybe get away with asking somebody to build a prototype for you. You might be able to do it on equity, but odds are you're going to be wrong with that prototype, and you're going to have to iterate very quickly and a lot. So you're going to have to do that internally, right? So you can't be a guy out of a business school and say, well, I'll just get somebody else to build a product. I'll just build a PowerPoint. It doesn't work that way. And today, design is the cost of admission. People have such a small amount of time that they will give you to look at your product that you have to get them with design. They don't care what kind of database you use, if it's .NET or if it's Rails or if it's Scala or Java. They don't know and they don't care. They care about the user experience, and especially in the mobile world, you have very few seconds to get somebody's attention and keep it. So design is very much key. So business, engineering, and design. That's a startup team. So why here and why now, right? We talked about this earlier, you know, running away to Silicon Valley versus operating wherever you are. So I'm very bullish on the rest of the world. The rest of the world is going to grow much faster than Silicon Valley. And if you're already here, you have a natural ecosystem, natural support system that will help you launch your startup much better than raising a small amount of money and trying to go to the Startup Olympics in Silicon Valley. So first of all, it is easier to start a company anywhere in the world now than it was in 1999 in Silicon Valley. Think about that. So if you're complaining that, oh no, there's no investors here, or it's hard, or I can't find engineers, or this or that, it's an order of magnitude easier and faster to do this. Why? Because of this. The world went mobile, the world has changed, right? This is a famous picture of the Pope being sworn in, or whatever the term is for the Pope being coming in, 2005 versus 2013. It's a mobile world. And today, you have distribution platforms that didn't exist before. Payments are solved. Being able to put your app in front of millions of users in seconds is there, right? You have Facebook, you have Twitter, you have all these platforms, and you can do that from anywhere. Before, if you want to start a software company, you're going to spend your first few $1 million just buying servers and putting them in co-location facility. Now, people take this for granted, but all you have to do is open an Amazon or Rackspace account. right? So these things allow you to do business anywhere. Now, talking about the venture world a little bit, European exits are 25% smaller than US, but the entry valuations are 3 to 4 times cheaper. And investors know this. So Europe produces half as many exits as the US, and this number is actually climbing. 1/3 of the 100 million plus, it's called home run exits, but on 1/5 of the money. Right? So the economics are amazing. This is why I've decided to actually spend a lot of time on a plane, partner up with great people in Europe, and start a fund here. And Europe investments are growing very quickly, especially this year. A big, big jump. So over 35% jump just this year in the amount of capital being invested in Europe. So I'm kind of lumping in Middle East with Europe, but it's close behind Europe. So brace yourselves, investors are coming. Now, a few things that I want to leave for you, right? This is usually a much longer talk, but a few things that I want you to think about. 3 things. Win your home market first. If you're already here, you understand the culture, you understand the local problems better than somebody from far away, and if anybody's going to win this local market, it will be you. And you have much higher chance of winning the local market than you do the global market, right? So that's step 1. Step 2 is as soon as you gain some kind of knowledge, start giving back. It's very important. It's one of the most important things to the ecosystem is that people give back that knowledge and support each other. It's not competition, it's cooperation. That's the only way that the whole ecosystem will grow. And thirdly, help build the ecosystem, right? The ecosystem needs a few different things. It needs talent, it needs density, right? You certainly have density and talent here. It needs culture, certain culture, right? You need to understand the culture. Capital, obviously, and regulations. So this is where the government can help, is with regulations, not necessarily with capital, right? There's a great study, Startup Weekend did a study. I'll post my slides online. You can get the link from there and download the study. But this is what it takes to create an ecosystem, right? Generally speaking. So with that, thank you very much. Follow me on Twitter, and I'll share the slides out.
Thank you so much, Vitaly. Just stay there. 2 questions. First, since you're active in emerging markets, no, I'm not going to talk about panels, don't worry. Do you think they're related to the title of your talk? Do you find there's more entrepreneurs in emerging markets than in your hometown of San Francisco Bay Area?
So
that's valid because we're in one, so.
Sure, entrepreneurs. So entrepreneurs, there's a positive way to describe entrepreneurs, a negative way. So positive thing about entrepreneurs is people that want to be entrepreneurs. But the negative is people being stuck in that mode and working for a big company, always going and socializing at events and saying, I'm going to start a startup. As soon as somebody gives me money, I'm going to quit my job and do the startup thing. Well, guess what? If you don't believe enough in yourself to quit your job and take a risk, no investor is going to invest in you, period.
Yeah, that's right. And then, because you mentioned in your talk, very fascinating difference between the US and Europe in terms of, this is why you actually spend a lot more time in Europe. But I know that at CCC, and we talked about it earlier on our panel, you're also actually looking at the Middle East. So do you see the same kind of dynamics happening here? And again, maybe valid for this audience.
Yeah, it's very interesting. So Central Eastern Europe and Middle East have a lot in common. Actually, Middle East has a lot, several things that are better than Central Eastern Europe, and that's density and one united language with a big population. That's very important, right? So Arabic is a huge market that's largely untapped. Like US companies are not really paying attention to the Arabic-speaking market. You can argue maybe Russian is a good market, Russian-speaking market, 300 million in the world, but there's a whole lot more Arabic-speaking market. But the dynamics are the same, and we're interested in, it's a young population, growing population, and needs everything, just like, Southeast Asia.
Right. Well, on that, thank you very much, Vitaly. And thank you, guys. Thank you very much. That was the end of these 5 talks. I see that Samer Karam is running like a madman trying to get on stage. So I'll keep busy while he's actually coming, because I'm sure he forgot that he was supposed to be here. Hello, Samir. Oh, you've been running, right? Hey, come on. I mean, I know it's almost the end of the event, but I want you to give a big round of applause to this guy as well, because without him, yeah, come on, blah, blah, blah. Without him, most of us would not even be here, so. Yeah, be shy. I'm leaving. Bye-bye, thank you.